Competition for Orlando's tourism in Kurdistan? Maybe. We'll discuss that shortly on the Global Perspective Show.
This program was made possible by funding from the UCF Global Perspectives Office.
Hello and welcome to the Global Perspective Show. I'm John Bersia, Special Assistant to the President for Global Perspectives at the University of Central Florida. Our guest today is Qubad Talabani, who is the representative of the Kurdistan Regional Government in the United States. Welcome, Mr. Talabani.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about the work of your office for those who may not be familiar with it, Kurdistan being a subset within Iraq.
Sure. I represent the regional government of Kurdistan to the United States. Our mission is to strengthen the relationship between the Kurdistan region and the U.S. through working with the U.S. government, the U.S. Congress, the media, the think tanks and academic institutions, to include universities, to try to build bridges with the private sector in the United States, but also to serve the needs to the best that we can of the Kurdish American community that live in the United States.
Now, how big is that community for those who may not know?
It's around 50,000 scattered across the United States, with the largest concentration being in Nashville, Tennessee.
Now, how did that happen? Was there something about Nashville that attracted people, or are they just
country music?
Country music?
I'm not sure. I think it's the immigration service as a way of resettling people, and it created a little pocket of a community. And now, from the 70s on until today, when Kurds move to the United States, they see this vibrant community in Nashville, and they'll probably want to locate to it to be close to it.
And that would explain why there are universities in that area that have an interest in Kurdish issues.
That's
more
correct.
So than in other parts of the country.
That's correct, yeah.
Although we do have a Kurdish Political Studies initiative here at the University of Central Florida, of which we're very proud, and happy to have your support with that as well. Where is Kurdistan in terms of everything that's happening in Iraq? We have been watching the situation there very closely, the official end to the U.S. combat role, and we're kind of waiting to see what's coming next. How does Kurdistan fit into that mix?
Well, we're part of the mix. While we're having our own administration, our own governance, and taking care of Kurdish issues up in the north, we're heavily involved on a national level, trying to put together this new government since our elections in March. Obviously, there are challenges to that. The U.S. has declared an end to combat missions in Iraq. It has begun and made enormous progress in its redeployment of its forces from Iraq. So the U.S. military footprint in the country is much less than it has been. But rather than stay out of the fray, as many people expected us to do, we're actually in the thick of it in Baghdad, trying to bring the different groups together, trying to shift the discussions away from who should be the next prime minister into more of a operational discussion about what kind of government should Iraq have, what kind of policies should this new Iraq have, because this new Iraq is going to manage a transitioning United States from the country.
Now, your father is involved in all of this at the national level as the president. Tell us a little bit about how that affects your work, and maybe a little bit about some of the conversations you have with him, things that you can share with us.
Well, he's obviously heavily involved as the president of the country, and he's played this role really since assuming the office of trying to bring people together, trying to bring the different parties together, the different ideologies together, to really try to create a country that is truly tolerant of each other's beliefs and ideologies. Now, the position of president is up for grab, as is all of the other positions for the next government. So it's an interesting period for him personally, but I think he's looking at this much broader than his own personal ambitions, and and really working with other Iraqi partners to try to, again, move that discussion forward, take the personality out of the issues and move it to policies and issues.
In terms of Kurdistan specifically, what do you feel are maybe 2 or 3 of the areas where you've made the most progress in the past several years?
Well, we've always prided ourselves on the safety and stability, the security of the Kurdistan region. That's something that has never been questioned. We're proud of the fact that we've not lost one US or foreign service member or civilian due to hostile action since Operation Iraqi Freedom, and I always knock on wood because we're proud of that statistic and we want it to stay that way. But where we're really proud of is the enormous development that the region has undertaken, the economic development, the fact that our private sector now is heavily involved in rebuilding, not just rebuilding the towns and cities, but truly entering into large-scale economic development projects, really trying to build up, raise the standard of living for our citizens. Our government is launching several initiatives. One is an education reform initiative, trying to get our primary schools, middle schools, and colleges and universities up to a much higher standard. We're also working on some other issues, such as improving our governance, improving our transparency, and dealing with corruption.
Talk about those a little bit, because the success stories, I think, are getting out to more and more people, but sometimes the challenges aren't as well known. Maybe a little bit about the corruption issue. Exactly what are you talking about, and what kinds of things are being done to address it?
Well, we have, as with any developing government, as with any developing society, we have challenges. Our bureaucracy is never the smoothest. We have gone through several iterations of governments in the region. There was a time not too long ago when we had 2 governments in the region. So over the last several years, we've done our best to try to unify those 2 governments. That unification process has brought with it a very cumbersome bureaucratic process, whereas before there may be 2 ministers, now there is, or ministries, now there is 1 ministry. So you've got just a logistical issue of trying to unify these institutions. Obviously, corruption is something that we're very concerned about, that we're doing our best to deal with. It exists. We cannot say that there is no corruption within our governance. But rather than just cry about it, we've actually gone out on our own initiative, teamed up with international consultants to draw out a roadmap for how we're going to combat the issues of corruption, how we're going to deal with governance as a whole. We feel that the key to combating corruption is not just to highlight 1 or 2 corrupt officials, but to put in place a system of governance that will make it very difficult for corruption to exist. So good governance and transparency is one of the major pillars of our government. It was started in the previous cabinet, and the current cabinet is continuing this policy, and we're serious about it.
Talk to us about where the market is going in Kurdistan. Where are the opportunities for business, and maybe give us a short description of how significant the changes have been over the last 2 decades.
There is a shift in the market right now. We've historically been traders. We've bought and sold, sometimes legally, sometimes illegally. That's been the nature of Kurdistan in this part of the world for thousands of years. But we've realized that we don't need to just be traders. We don't need to be importers of goods. We have enormous agricultural potential, for example. And our government is looking to find ways to incentivize the re-emergence of our agricultural sector. We have a great potential for industries to emerge. We have every basic raw material that one could need to really develop a thriving industrial base. Everyone talks about Iraq and Kurdistan's oil and gas sector. That's a no-brainer. Our governments have been really pretty aggressive on developing the oil and gas sector in Kurdistan. We know that's eventually going to become the backbone of Iraq's economy, but also our own economy. But we mustn't get lazy with oil and gas. We have to diversify our economy, and that's why agriculture is key. And if we continue to stabilize the way we have, I assure you that we'll become a major tourist hub for the region. I doubt that we'll compete with Orlando, but we'll definitely be, for our part of the world, a major tourist attraction.
Now, agriculture may not be what comes to most people's minds when they think about Iraq, but maybe sketch for us historically where the Kurdistan area has been in terms of food production.
Historically, we've always been known as the breadbasket, not only for Iraq, but historically for the entire region. Regrettably, and culminating in Saddam's era, our agricultural sector was completely devastated. The wars with Iran also further devastated our fields. There were some 22 million landmines buried on the border areas between Iraq and Iran. Of course, that's the Kurdistan region, which totally decimated our agricultural lands and forced the farmers out of their lands into the urban areas. We're now clearing those mines, and we're trying to re-incentivize for the farmers to go back to their lands to cultivate their crops. We have great pomegranates, we have great honey, and I would look forward to the day that I go to the supermarkets here in the United States and see packaged honey and pomegranate juice from Kurdistan.
Now, do you see the potential to become the breadbasket again, not just within Iraq, but a real food exporter to the United States and the rest of the world?
Absolutely. I think that we have the potential, we have the intent, we have the desire, we have the vision. What we don't have is maybe the certain expertise, management capacity, marketing skills. These are the kinds of skills that we can employ from the outside world to come in to help us package these goods. I mean, I see these pomegranate juices going for sale in supermarkets that go for $10, $12. I mean, it's ludicrous. So I'm always telling Kurdish businessmen and farmers that there's a market here. We just need to tap into that potential, and I'm confident that with the right kind of vision and the right kind of focus, we'll get there.
Well, with that, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're speaking with Qubad Talabani about the situation in Kurdistan and Iraq. Getting back to our discussion about the situation in Kurdistan, you've talked about agriculture, you've talked about the opportunities in terms of natural resources. You mentioned tourism. What do you think is Kurdistan's tourism potential?
We have enormous potential for tourism in the sense that, one, Kurdistan is stunning. Scenery-wise, it's beautiful. We have the majestic peaks, we have beautiful plains, we have it's almost an untouched area, and very few of those exist around the world. And with the two airports that we have operational now, we're getting flights in from all over the world. These are international airports. We're currently about to open and inaugurate the new terminal at Erbil International Airport. It's going to have the longest runway in the Middle East, and will cater to, I think, flights from capitals all around the world, which means making it a lot easier for people to come to Kurdistan. But other than its natural beauty, we have a lot of archaeological history in Kurdistan. It goes back thousands of years. Currently at the Smithsonian's Natural History Museum, there is the remnants from the oldest found human fossils from Kurdistan, from the Shanidar cave. So we have, again, whether it's religious tourism, whether it's just archaeological tourism, we have that potential. We have some amusement parks that are there right now, but obviously we can imagine them getting better with time. With our mountains, skiing is a natural target. I can imagine years to come that we'll be a major ski hub for the region, but all of this requires regional stability and again a vision to see this through.
What kind of connections are there from Central Florida directly or through Washington or New York? They're much better than they used to be.
They are much better, and we're hoping to continue to build on those relationships. We're proud of the relationship that exists between UCF and Kurdistan. We're hoping to see that as to blossom and to strengthen and to branch out into other areas. So that I think that is it's a ideal hub because of the connection that the university has with business, with the policy community. So it's a perfect venue. So we look forward to strengthening that friendship. We see CENTCOM is not too far away, so there's definitely a policy relationship there. And even though your U.S. forces are not, let's say, combat forces in Iraq right now, I think there'll be a long-term military relationship between Iraq and the United States, and by extension Kurdistan and the United States for some time.
I'd like to go back to the comment you made about how there hadn't been any U.S. military casualties in Kurdistan since the beginning of this process, and help people understand why that is. What is it that makes Kurdistan and has made Kurdistan relatively stable, secure, safe all these years? This isn't by chance.
No, it's not by chance, nor by luck. This is something that obviously the security services in Kurdistan have been very good at their jobs at keeping order. The intelligence services have always been able to root out the heinous attempts against the Kurdistan region. We've not been immune from violence. There have been on occasions where the terrorists have been able to strike targets, Kurdish citizens, but I think that the real credit has to go to the people of the Kurdistan region. It's been the people that, despite what their feelings may be towards the government or towards the political parties or towards the political situation, the people have always been proud of Kurdistan, have always been proud to keep Kurdistan safe, secure. So when there is suspicious activity, it's always a tip-off from a citizen, from a concerned citizen, to the authorities that's been able to root out bad elements or terrorist organizations. On the other side, there is, I think, genuine affection from the people of Kurdistan towards America, towards the American people. Despite history and U.S. political engagement in Kurdistan throughout the 70s and early 90s, not always, let's say, deploying good policies towards Kurdistan, the no-fly zones that were established and the safe haven that was established after the evacuation of 91 was instrumental in allowing Kurdish people to come back down from the mountains, to rehabilitate their towns and cities. That safe haven and the no-fly zones that were established gave us the opportunity to build our government, to have our elections, to build the institutions of governance, and that protection will always be cherished and appreciated by Kurds, which is why we've never been shy about saying thank you to the United States. Obviously, the liberation of Iraq in 2003 further strengthened that relationship, further strengthened that appreciation that Kurds have towards the US, because we know that had it not been for the United States, Saddam would still be in power today. And after him, his son would have been in power. And then his other son would have been in power. And Iraq would have been a miserable mess for many, many decades to come.
In terms of the economic potential, how is Kurdistan planning to position itself? You talked about the agricultural potential, you talked about the resources, tourism, and everything else. Is there an active planning process going on with strategizing and so forth to take advantage of these opportunities? And how important is that in the relative scheme of things? You've got to have peace and security first, but obviously you have to plan for the future.
You know, I have to say, planning has never historically been a strong point for us because of the constant uncertainty that our people have faced for centuries. We've never had the luxury of being able to look or project 5, 10, 15 years down the line. With Saddam gone, with this new Iraq emerging, with the growing confidence of our own government and the growing competence of our own government, we're now finally having the luxury of being able to plan for our future development, to not only address the immediate needs that our people have, such as electricity, such as water, such as healthcare, education, but starting to plan for the future, starting to really build certain sectors, whether it's the oil and gas sector, whether it's the energy sector or the tourism sector, for example. So planning is becoming much more part of our mandate, so to speak. And you know, we've made mistakes along the way, and I'm sure we'll make mistakes in the future. But I think that is one area that, because of the stability that we have, because of the fact that we're not devoting 90% of our energy and our resources to keeping Kurdistan safe, we are able to think down the road. We are able to look at key initiatives, whether it's our good governance and transparency initiative, or whether it's building that transportation hub in fully maximizing those 2 airports that we have. It also helps us highlight some of our weak points, and we have several weak points. Our financial service sector, for example, is nowhere near where it should be. So again, it allows us to pinpoint our strengths and also to work on addressing some of our weaknesses. And if we don't have the resources or the manpower to address our weakness in this globalized economy, we're able to reach out to friends and partners in the United States, in the UK, in Asia or Europe, or even some from the region, whether it's from the Gulf or Turkey, which is today the largest investor in the Kurdistan region.
I was thinking along the same lines. The Kurdish culture is one that has always been very adaptive, very imitative when it sees something elsewhere that it can use or work into its system in some way. To what extent are universities from other places playing a role in the development of Kurdistan in the 21st century?
I think this is one area that has truly blossomed since Operation Iraqi Freedom, because up until then Iraq was under sanctions, Iraq was isolated from the rest of the world, and by extension so was Kurdistan. Since those restrictions have been lifted, we're able to reach out, to forge partnerships between Kurdish universities and American universities, US academic institutions and Kurdish institutions, think tank to think tank relationships, getting visitors from the US, from elsewhere, to come to Kurdistan to meet with students, to meet with politicians, to meet with the business community. We've had this outreach now since 2003. There are several universities across the United States that have various departmental relationships with universities in Kurdistan. We have an American university operational now in Sulaymaniyah, the American University of Iraq, Sulaymaniyah, which is truly blossoming into a center of excellence, attracting students from not just from Kurdistan, but from all over the country, from all over Iraq. We're hoping to expand on those. We're hoping to have more of these centers of excellence, because ultimately we want to give an opportunity to our next generation, the future leaders of our country, to be educated in the right way, to have the patriotism and passion for their own country that the revolutionaries had, but backed with the ammunition of being skilled in whether it's politics, whether it's policy, or whether it's economic development.
And there's an opportunity, I would imagine, for students as well from foreign universities, if the environment is safe and secure for military personnel. That certainly helps in saying, you know, you're going to have a reasonably safe experience here.
Yes, absolutely, and we have international standard schools now operational in Kurdistan. So many of the diplomats from around the world that are currently posted to Erbil, whether it's through the consulates or their embassy offices, some of them are even now sending their children to these schools that we have in Kurdistan. That's going to continue to develop. So we look forward to that. And we look forward to connecting in every which way possible with the international community.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for the Global Perspective Show. I'm John Bersia. We'll see you next time.
This program was made possible by funding from the UCF Global Perspectives Office.